What is a drone? According to Merriam-Webster, a drone is a deep or sustained monotonous sound. While this description matches the kind of sounds discussed in this essay, it is far too broad. This definition encompasses anything from the hissing whir of a fan to the low hum of a car engine. For the purposes of this essay, we'll have to refine the definition of drone to refer to any sustained sound so long as it has a clear tone and distinct pitch. In the context of Western music, it is often referred to as the pedal point or pedal note. While we're going through definitions, let's also define religion. Yes, religion. This might seem redundant, after all, doesn't religion already have a definition? Of course religion has a definition, but not just one. What separates a religion from a cult? That is, if they're not the same, and what's the difference between a religion and a philosophy? Is God an essential part of all religions? What about Buddhism? In Religious, Jonathan Z. Smith discusses this question of defining religion, and ultimately, he concludes that there are more than 50 ways to define religion. So, what I mean when I refer to religion is an institution or community of people who share a set of common beliefs and practices. I could have included the requirement of either a god or a godhead, but I don't think either of those are essential for something to be a religion. There are plenty of religions, such as Taoism, which present a cosmology without some omnipotent god controlling the universe, nor does every religion necessarily have to have a leader. But again, this is just my definition. Now, on with the essay itself. Trying to pinpoint the history of the drone is a pointless endeavor. Sound is ephemeral, it is fleeting, so despite physical evidence which exists via clay tablets and manuscripts from millennia ago, there is no way to explore the actual sounds these materials represent, nor the sounds which predate them. Perhaps troglodytes were droning away in their caves as they performed some pagan rituals, or perhaps they did not. Alas, there is no material record of sound. The earliest record of the drone we have dates back to circa 1500 BCE, to the New Kingdom in Egypt. Influences from Mesopotamia began to appear in Egypt. A new instrument, the double oboe, was introduced, consisting of two canes, one of which was used to create a drone bass. The tanpura, on the other hand, is a drone instrument native to India and an ancient ancestor of the lute. It has been found in a variety of iterations throughout the Old World and is speculated to date as far back as 4,500 years. Quote, "We see that it is possible that as long as 2500 BC, the basic concept concerning the sound quality of the tanpura, i.e. the production of buzz and overtones, was known. This was certainly true of the lyre family of Mesopotamia and later Africa." What we see despite its place of origin is that the drone has pervaded the music of a variety of cultures for several thousand years. Harry Sword writes, "The ancient Greeks evoked the delirium of Dionysus with the drone of the Alos pipes. Indeed, religious practice all over the world, from the sacred Buddhist Om to haunting Gregorian chant, continues, as it has done for centuries, to center the drone as a sonic enabler of meditative transcendence." So clearly, there is a lot to be said about the drone, but so what? What is its meaning? It's almost as if there is something inherently spiritual and mystical about the drone. It appears everywhere, cross-culturally, and especially in religious contexts, so what's the secret behind the drone's mystical sound? Gothic Europe reverberated, quite literally, with the sound of drone organum. Some of the earliest recorded music in Europe comes from the 12th and 13th centuries by composers such as Leonin and Periton. This music features pedal notes which fill cathedrals with a seemingly endless reverberation. The large cathedrals of Gothic Europe served not only as magnificent spaces of worship, but also perhaps inadvertently as enormous amplifiers. The acoustic signatures of these buildings featured incredibly high levels of reverberation. Sound would echo off walls, creating an unnatural sonic effect, an echo unmatched even by the most spacious caves. This effect is especially intense in the hall of Hagia Sophia. Reverberation here can reach up to 12 seconds, which means it would take that long for a sound to die in this space. with reverberation being so intense, it becomes difficult to understand what people are saying and even more so, singing. Words blend into a blur of vowels to the point that only pitches remain intelligible. This brings attention to an important point regarding the meaning of the music, and that is the prioritization of the music itself over the liturgy which it is meant to represent. The music becomes an abstract representation of the liturgy. Furthermore, the profound reverberation created by the magnitude of the spaces organum was traditionally performed in creates an illusion of never-ending sound. Because the sound is constantly bouncing around the space, it is no longer interrupted by pauses summoned through the singer's need to take a breath. The sound blends with itself in a way which makes it seem eternal, immortal, qualities only paralleled by God. The same interpretation can be applied to the general polyphony of organum, of which the pedal note is only a piece. Even though the liturgy becomes unintelligible with such profound reverberation, polyphony serves as an abstract way of manifesting the divinity of God in a way which words simply cannot. As I see it, the drone of the pedal note forms the base of this polyphony. It creates the foundation over which new ideas can be built. Much like the horizon in a landscape, it is something you don't really notice until it either changes or is completely removed from the picture. The drone guides our perspective and gives meaning to the focal features of the music it resides in. Even though the pedal note itself is unlikely to be that focal feature, it still plays a meaningful role in the overall structure of the piece. Plain chant and plain song lacking a drone was dominant in many churches throughout Europe prior to the Renaissance. Melodies for these chants were memorized and recorded using neumes. Neumes, unlike notes of modern diastematic notation, were descendants of Greek and Latin accent marks, which helped singers recall melodies they had previously memorized. The melodies of these chants were therefore used not only to embellish the sound of the chant, but also as tools of memorization. Though Christian clergy had the literacy skills required to read, they were still expected to memorize psalms and other parts of the divine office. Music, in some ways, served as a mnemonic device to aid the task of this memorization. Here, it is clear that the liturgy is the primary feature of the chant, and not the music which is used to enhance it. When placed side by side, it becomes clear that the difference between drone organum and plain chant which lacks a drone is quite immense. The ordinary plain song lacks the fullness of the more music-centered drone organum. While plain chant is more like a mantra in its aesthetic and purpose, drone organum is altogether a completely different animal. Its meaning is more abstract, and its sound dominates over the words it's meant to convey. This change of focus to a more abstract, artistic representation of divinity continues into the Renaissance and remains a vital component of sacred Christian music today. Contemporary composers such as John Tavener, Eric Whitacre, Ola Gjeilo, and Daniel Elder continue this tradition of sacred polyphonic music. I would even like to argue in later chapters that the musical style of these composers has become a sort of reification of divinity in popular culture. Their music conjures associations of holiness and divinity when heard by Western listeners. These associations find their roots in drone organum and the mark it has left on European Christian music. But the drone isn't only important in the Christian context. On the contrary, it finds far more ancient roots in the lands to the east. The tanpura, which I previously mentioned passingly, is a drone instrument used to lay the bed for Indian rags, or anglicized ragas. The purpose and function of a raga is to delight and gratify the listener through a calculated sequence of musical notes. That is to say, a raga is not just a random collection of pleasant sounds, but rather a formulated melody whose purpose is to delight, to give pleasure. The drone of the tanpura in the performance of ragas serves essentially the same function as the drone in previously discussed organum. It adds a foundational layer of sound over which the raga itself can be sung, eventually either ascending or descending to the pitch of the drone. In this way, it too functions as a means to create polyphony and make the music sound more full. The musical intricacies and polyphonic attributes of ragas also raise the idea that here too, music is prioritized over semantics. The abstract musical sound holds more meaning than the words themselves. But you cannot mention similarities without also noting the differences in these two types of drone music. The most obvious difference is the timbre of the voice singing a pedal note compared to the timbre of a drone instrument such as the tanpura. The tanpura has a much brighter, almost reedy timbre, while the human voice is prone to creating a much more open and darker tone. I'll have to stop myself right here, however, because the human voice was not the only drone instrument used in medieval Europe for religious performances. Other drone instruments, such as the hurdy-gurdy, were often used in place of the human voice to provide a constant drone. You could even argue that the hurdy-gurdy does a better job than the human voice in creating a consistent sound, simply due to the lack of a need to take a breath. Aside from timbre, something that sets the tanpura drone apart from the pedal note in drone organum is that in organum it is acceptable for the pedal note to shift in pitch throughout the duration of a piece. This pitch change may function to give the music a sense of movement or progression. In Indian classical music, however, it is quite typical for a drone to stay pure and unchanged tonally throughout the entire duration of a raga. This same sort of staticity of pitch is also a feature found in Om chanting. Om is said to be the first sound of the universe. While the validity of this claim is not of interest to me, what interests me is the sound of vocalization of the chants and the drone it creates. Here the drone finds itself, for once, the focal sound, and therein lies its purpose. The long vocalization of Om serves as a tool for focusing such that one can meditate or go into a trance. Eventually, the drone gets tuned out by the brain, and all that is left is the subconscious. It's no wonder, then, why the meditative qualities of the drone have also found a niche in hypnosis. A technique often employed by hypnotherapists is to speak in a low monotone, resembling a drone, in order to entrance their clients. The drone presents within itself a point of focus. The same way a pendulum swings back and forth, the sound of the drone appears perpetual and natural. It has no aim or connotation. It simply is, suspended in space. So after this long, snore-inducing analysis of drones in various environments and religious contexts, a very clear pattern emerges. The drone is almost always an accompanying sound, and even when it is not, its purpose is still for it to be ultimately tuned out. It is both foundational and, to some, unnoticeable. The fact that it's been found everywhere and through all various segments of our history all points to one idea. The most scientific conclusion which can be made regarding the universality and musical function of the drone, to put it most concisely, it's just background noise.